able to be up here speaking to you today. Some of you may remember, if you're old enough, that I used to speak here more often when I was the youth pastor here. Actually, you don't have to be that old to remember that. And since then, I've spoken here once in a while, but it seems like it's been a while. So it's great to be back. Great to be up here. If you have your Bibles, I want to invite you to turn to the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Now, let's be honest. How many of you here really enjoy reading Deuteronomy? Okay. Like 4 of you. Super. Deuteronomy is a book that, a lot of the book is Moses speaking to the children of Israel shortly before he dies. And he basically is kind of retelling the story of what's happened to the Israelites, as well as summarizing and retelling God's law to them. And so we're going to look at a little bit of that today. But before we get into that, I want us to think a little bit about the idea of containment. In our world, there are things that we try to contain. If the dishwasher starts leaking, we are quick to try to contain that leak, aren't we? We're grabbing towels from every which way, putting them there, trying to soak up the water before it ruins our house. If our kids are eating a meal and they're really young, we're trying to contain that food, at least mostly to their faces. But often it gets beyond that to their clothes and the floor and the chair. And if you don't wash your hands right away after they eat, it kind of finds its way upstairs. Containment is a good thing sometimes. Sometimes people try to contain bad news. You may remember recently United Airlines had a little bit of an issue. Anybody remember that? I'm sure United Airlines would have loved to have contained every video that any of those passengers took of that guy being drug off a plane. I'm sure they would have loved to just delete those videos. But they had to deal with the publicity. Not the publicity they wanted, but they had to deal with it. When it comes to politicians and celebrities, at times information comes out about their life that they would love to contain. Maybe a video is released that portrays some aspect of their past life that they really didn't want public. And so they go on damage control, trying to minimize the impact of that information that came out. Containment can be a good thing. But could containment ever be a bad thing? I would like to suggest that it can be. Let's take a look here at Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting with verse 4. And remember, Moses is here kind of giving his final speeches before he dies, talking about what is important for God's people to remember. Back in chapter 5, he's just gone over the 10 Commandments again. Now, maybe a lot of you thought the 10 Commandments were in Exodus 20, and you're right, they are. But they also occur again in Deuteronomy 5 as Moses is kind of going over the information. It's almost like a review session. I know some of you have exams coming up in school soon. Those grade 12s, you've got some diploma exams, which I'm sure you're looking forward to being done. And before those diploma exams, you probably take some practice exams, dealing with questions very similar to the ones that you'll see on the real exam. You probably have some review sessions with your teacher, kind of reviewing what you've covered throughout the school year because you probably forgot it. Deuteronomy is almost Moses' review session with the children of Israel, as he's going over the important information before he is no longer with them, and just before they are going to be crossing the Jordan River into Israel. And so here, in chapter 6, verse 4, he says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is how many? One." This phrase is a phrase that's very important in Judaism, in the Jewish religion. It's often referred to as the Shema, which is the Hebrew word for hear, the first word of this sentence. It's we could say a command to listen. Now, for those of you who are students, if your teacher is teaching you in class and your teacher says, "Okay, this next point I want you to write down because it's going to be on the test tomorrow." Do you guys pay attention? No? Yeah? Some of you? Okay. If your teacher says this is important for you to know because it's going to be on the test, I think you pay attention because most of you want to do well on that test. And so here when Moses says, "Listen, pay attention, hear, O Israel," we can assume that he's just about to say something very important. And what he says is foundational. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." This is important truth. We serve a God who asks that we serve him not just with our outward actions, but with every aspect of who we are, with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your might. This is important. If we were to fast forward hundreds of years to the New Testament, Jesus is asked by someone in his audience, "What is the greatest commandment?" What does Jesus say to him? "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might." So we know that this is important not just to Jewish believers. Jesus transferred the importance of this into the Christian world as well. Now, truth is great. It's good to know stuff. It's good to know information. But it also needs to make a difference in our lives. There's a lot of people who know a lot of things, and they're happy to share with you the bunches of stuff that they know. But some of those people may not have a clue how to apply that information to real life. It's been said that knowledge is knowing, and this kind of goes along with our children's story, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Okay? It's a random fact. But wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. When it comes to our knowledge of God and his truth, God is not just asking us to memorize random facts as if we're getting ready for some exam before we just forget it and move on with life. God is asking us to allow it to make a difference in our lives. Now, I am going to admit something. I love Legos, especially city Legos. Anybody else here like Legos? Okay. Wait, any kids here like Legos? Okay, some. This is a stunt truck. It's for ages 5 to 12. Now, I'm not 5 or 12 or anywhere in between, but I love Legos. I have lots of them at home up on the bookcase. I don't really enjoy playing with them much anymore. To tell you the truth, what I really enjoy, you know how Legos come with a little direction booklet that has step-by-step directions in picture form? What I love is building the Legos when I first get them. Once they're built, I mean, who cares? I'll put them on the shelf. Nobody better touch them, but I'm not really going to play with them much. I probably should play with them more. I know my daughter Chloe likes to play with Legos, and I should probably play with them more with her. But I like to follow the directions step by step, carefully, to build whatever it is that is meant to be built. Now, I bought this stunt truck yesterday at Walmart. And it looks really cool. They always put a picture of it like in action on the front, right? It doesn't really happen that way in real life. I don't know. They have to be pretty creative taking these photos. On the back, there's all kinds of exciting little snapshots of life with this stunt truck. Now, I love building Legos, as I said. And I have Legos here in this box. And so, since I really love building Legos, I guess I should just leave them in this box, right? Am I going to enjoy that? That's not what I enjoy about Legos. I mean, it is fun to go to like Toys R Us or somewhere and look at the shelves of Legos that are beyond my budget. But, well, you know, adults have real things to pay for, like houses and stuff. But if I don't take these Legos out of this box, I am not going to get the joy of following the step-by-step instructions. Now, there's this little tab here, and there's a picture of a finger and an arrow, like you're supposed to push on this. So if I open this box, am I going to be able to enjoy building these better? Actually, no, because they're in a bag. Okay, so I love building Legos. So I have Legos in a bag, so I can just set these bags out, and I'll really get a lot of enjoyment out of these bags of Legos, right? Or do I need to open the bag? Actually, this particular one has one piece that's not in a bag, so I got lucky. But if I actually want to follow this major book, now this set has 91 pieces, and yet there's probably 91 pages in this book. Well, 30-something, 40-something. There's a lot of steps in this building this thing. If I really want to go through these steps and build this Lego car, truck, whatever it is, I am going to need to open these bags. Because if I leave the Legos in the bag, I'm never going to get to build them. Now, is there somebody here who is really good at building Legos, following the directions? Is there somebody under the age of 12 who really enjoys Pastor Andrew? Let's see. How about this guy here in the front row, or the second row? Do you want to come up and build this for me real quick? Now, you're good at this, right? Yeah? Okay. So come up and let's see what you can come up with. Okay? Now, to tell you the truth, since I told you that the part of Legos I enjoy is building them, he may do a great job on this, but when I get home at some point, I'm going to take it apart and rebuild it, because that's what I do. Okay, so work on building this while I talk, okay? So back to our Bible passage in Deuteronomy chapter 6. We've seen this important truth. We serve one God, and he asks us to serve him with all of our heart, all of our, what was it? Soul, and all of our might. So that's great to know that. It's a great trivia fact. If you're ever asked about that, you can say, yes, I'm supposed to serve the one God with all of my heart, all of my soul, all of my might. It's great. But what difference really does that make? Let's go on here. Verse 6 says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your" what? On your heart. So, are these just words that I memorize and then just go on with life as if they don't make any difference? It seems that these words need to make a difference in my life. Now, I was talking earlier about containing things. And there's a lot of messes and things that we want to contain. But when it comes to our relationship with God, that is not meant to be contained in one compartment of our life. That's not meant to be like these Legos and just heat sealed into a bag and just left in a bag. My relationship with God is not something that I deal with for a couple hours on Sabbath morning and then I go on with my normal life. God is calling us to take our religion, our relationship with him outside of the box, to let it fill and affect every area of our lives. It says here, verse 7, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." So this is pretty all-encompassing. We should talk about God, our relationship with God, His truth with our children. We should talk about Him when we're walking along the way. Maybe in our modern world we could say we should be thinking or talking about our relationship with God as we're commuting to work or to school. Talks about thinking about it when you sit down in your house, when you lie down, when you rise up. Is there really any part of your day that was left out in that? Basically, it seems like it's saying that this truth is to make a difference in our lives from the moment we wake up until the moment we fall asleep. Too often, we try to put our religion into a box. Now, I work in a Christian school setting, and I believe that Christian education is a great blessing. But if a student or a family thinks that those 7 hours or whatever it is that their kid spends in a Christian school building each day, if they think that's all they need of God and religion, that's a sad mistake. Because our Christianity is not to be limited to just a Christian school building. It's not to be limited to only Calgary Central Church. It's not to be limited to only Wednesday night prayer meeting. It's not to be limited to 10 or 15 minutes each day, maybe, or maybe for some an hour or two each day spent in devotional time. God expects our relationship with Him to make a difference all the time and everywhere. And so, looking at this passage, you shall teach them diligently to your children. So sharing. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way. So whether we're home or about, God is asking us to allow our religion, our spirituality, to be affecting everything. Now, some of you may have discovered the truth that it's a lot easier to witness for God talking to a stranger or somebody who we don't see all the time. Sometimes the hardest place to witness, the hardest place to share, to talk about our faith is at home with the people that we are stuck with every single day. But this seems to include those people at home. Are we allowing Jesus' light to shine out when we are in our house, when we are out and about? Now, it goes on here in this passage, verses 8 and 9, to talk about some really weird stuff. It says, "You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." Now, any of you who have ever been students and had a textbook that you needed to learn a bunch of information from, you probably know that it's not going to work if you just stick that textbook under your pillow at night and then go to sleep. The information is not magically going to transfer into your head while you sleep. Now, that would be amazing. You know, if you needed like Physics 30 class, if you could just go to the store and spend $10 and buy a little chip and just pop it in, transfer the information, pop it out, get your little certificate and be done. Wouldn't that be amazing? To be able to load the information just like that and then use it, have it available? That's not how it works. Here it's talking about God's truth, God's law, like binding them as a sign on your hand. And they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. Now, some followers of Jewish religion take this pretty seriously. You may have seen people at times that have this little kind of like a box kind of thing on their forehead. Inside of that box, there are probably some passages of Scripture written down on some little pieces of paper that are put in there. Now, is that doing them any good? Is that information from that little box somehow transferring into their brain? It's not. But the point is, keeping God's truth in mind. For some of those people, maybe that box there reminds them of God's truth and helps them to think about it more often. Have you ever tied like a string around a finger to remind you of something? And then later you see the string and you wonder what it was for? Or maybe you make a note. I'm one of those kind of people who often make a to-do list. And I go back to that, maybe within a year or two, and I look at it. It feels really good to cross things off that list and have that list get shorter, but usually mine just get longer and longer. We need things to remind us sometimes. And so maybe for some people, some visible reminder of thinking about God's truth could be helpful. But we must always remember that there is nothing magical about tying God's word to our forehead or putting a sign over our doorway with some of God's truth on it. There's nothing magical about that. But maybe for some people, it's a reminder. And that could be good. That can be a blessing. And so, God is calling us to take what we believe out of the box, to take the Legos out of those bags that they were in, so that they actually do us some good. How's the car coming? Look at that. Someday it'll have 4 wheels even. Cool. God is calling us to allow what we believe to impact every single area of our life. That includes our work. Did you know that you can be a missionary for God even if you don't work as a pastor or a missionary? In fact, sometimes I think the auto mechanic, the firefighter, the policeman, the nurse, the doctor can actually, in many ways, have a greater impact for God in their sphere of where they work than many ministers have. And so what are some ways that we can allow God's truth to affect every area of our life? Our hobbies. Maybe you like playing golf. Maybe your hobby is building Legos. How can you allow God's truth to make a difference in your life and other people's lives as you go about doing your hobbies, your chores? How can everything that you do in your day be allowing God's light to shine? There was a guy by the name of Jason. He was 31 years old, and he was part of a group of skateboarders. Now, when you hear the word skateboarder, do any of you have a kind of an image in your mind of who these people are? Probably some of us do, right? Skateboarders are usually a special group of people. They have their own way of talking, their own way of dressing, their own way of doing things, their own way of following the rules or not following the rules. Jason, at age 31, was part of a group of skateboarders. Now, pretty much all the skateboarders were younger than him. And most of them had a different kind of lifestyle than him. Jason was a Christian man. He was married, had kids. Not really your classic skateboarder type. But yet he was a skateboarder. And in this group of skateboarders, he wanted to make a difference. He could have said, hey, skateboarding, I do that, and then I do the church thing at other times. They're not related. They have nothing to do with each other. But no. He wanted his faith in God to make a difference, even while he was out hanging out with the skateboarders. And so he came up with a creative way to do that. He started creating a short little daily video and putting it up on YouTube. And this video would show some aspect of his normal life. Some days, maybe it had to do with skateboarding, like a wipeout that he had. Some days, maybe it was him hanging out with his kids or his family. And he wove into these videos aspects of his faith. And he invited the other guys in his skateboarding group to watch these videos. And those videos on YouTube, each video was getting somewhere between 40 and 50 views, which was right about the number of people in his skateboarding group. So basically what was happening was Jason was sharing snippets of his faith with his skateboarding friends, and pretty much the whole group was watching these videos. Now, if he had straight up invited them to church, probably most of them wouldn't have shown up. If he had been like, hey guys, come over here, let me preach a sermon to you, probably most of them would have just laughed at him or gone somewhere else. But he found a way to allow his faith to make a difference, even in his hobby, in this sport that he enjoyed. What are some ways that we can allow our faith to make a difference in every aspect of our lives? How's the Lego thing coming here? Good. Very good. Okay, he's on step 22. He's moving along. So I'm going to let you keep working on this. But in the meantime, this is starting to look a little bit like a car or a truck. It's definitely moved beyond just being a bag of random pieces. And the truth is, God wants to do something beautiful in our lives. He wants to build us into the person He wants us to be. And part of that is letting our faith out of the box so it can make a difference around us. Our closing hymn today is Be Thou My Vision. And as we think about the words in this hymn, I just want us to think about, how is God being my vision? How is God pointing me in the path He would have me go? How is God showing me ways that I can allow my faith to impact every area of my life?